How does the Bible describe the Earth's geometric shape? Many Christians do not realize that the Bible describes the Earth as a sphere. This is the topic of today's video. Why is this important to Christians? Critics may argue there's no scientific evidence for God, and they rightly point out that the Bible doesn't mention sphere. Last, they mention that even biblical scholars disagree on a spherical Earth in the Bible. However, when the Old Testament was written, it was etymologically impossible to use the term sphere. Furthermore, it is not mentioned that one can always find opposing viewpoints. For example, in the most recent election between Harris and Trump, many will dispute the cause of Harris's loss. But was it Harris's fault or the Democratic policies? So opposing viewpoints are immaterial. Today, we will analyze the facts to present a definitive answer regarding the geometric shape of the Earth as described in the Bible. If verified, this will offer some evidence for the existence of God that can be independently evaluated. For over 25 years, I have engaged in discussions in Christian apologetics with a focus on meticulous analysis, similar to how a plowman removes obstacles from a field to improve agricultural conditions. My objective is to eliminate common challenges faced by Christians, therefore fostering a deeper faith in Christ. There are three passages in the Bible that may refer to the geometric shape of the earth. The first is Isaiah chapter 40 verse 22, which states that God sits above the circle of the earth. This passage can be seen either as a literal or metaphorical, as it also mentions that the heavens being spread out like a tent. Another passage is Isaiah chapter 11 verse 12, which mentions Judea being gathered from the four corners of the earth. Some interpret this as describing the earth as having four corners, though the phrase is still used colloquially today. For example, athletes came from the four corners of the earth to compete in the Olympics. And she invited relatives from the four corners of the earth to her 80th birthday party. And the four corners of the earth deli in Burlington, Vermont. Thus, if we can mention the four corners of the earth while acknowledging its spherical shape, we can apply a similar perspective to the books of the Bible. The final passage to consider is Job chapter 26 verse 10, which asserts that God inscribed a circle upon the earth. This passage will be the focus of our detailed analysis. We shall demonstrate that it unequivocally describes a spherical earth. Additionally, it is essential to establish that this passage was composed before the concept of a spherical earth was recognized. Therefore, we will examine the historical context. Around 600 BC, Greek philosophers suggested that the earth was spherical. In 240 BC, Eratosthenes confirmed this fact through calculations based upon the measurements of a column's shadow in Alexandria compared to one in Syene, yielding an Earth circumference of about 250,000 stadies, close to today's measurement. Despite this accuracy, they did not use the term sphere to describe the Earth. Why wasn't this term used? The ancients were unable to use the term sphere to describe the Earth because this term, along with similar ones, are recent additions to every language. One of the earliest terms to describe a three-dimensional object was ball, which was incorporated into the English language in the 13th century. Other three-dimensional terminology followed, with sphere being added in the 14th century and globe in the 15th century. However, this only pertains to when these terms were introduced into the English lexicon. When did such terms first appear in any language? A comparable term, Sephiria, entered the Greek language between 200 BC and 500 AD. Similarly, medieval Latin included the term Saphiria. Thus, it was impossible to use a word that had not yet been invented. But the Greeks did have a three-dimensional object that could be used to describe a flat earth, the discus. Discus throwing had been a part of the Olympics since 708 BC. We even have a famous sculpture of a discus thrower, the iconic 5th century BC statue called Discobolus. Therefore, if a flat earth was the viewpoint of the ancient Greeks, they could have used the term disc to refer to the shape of the earth. Without the term sphere, the ancient Greeks used terms like circle, arc, and arch to describe circles or portions of circular shapes. Here is one example of an advocate for a spherical earth referring to it as a circle. Herodotus, a Greek historian and geographer from approximately 450 BC, described the earth as a circle drawn with a compass, rather than as a sphere. Despite this depiction, Herodotus was among the early advocates of the concept of a spherical earth. This does not imply that spherical shapes were not considered. Instead, it indicates that the appropriate terminology had not been developed. Consequently, neither Job nor the ancient Greeks could employ a term like sphere to describe the earth, even if such a description was implied. Next, we will examine the writings of the book of Job. Bible scholars do not know when the book of Job was written. However, there are clues in the Bible that give a close approximation of the era of its writing. Job chapter 22 verse 16 mentions the worldwide flood, saying that the foundations of the wicked were swept away. For reference sake, the biblical flood occurred around 2350 BC. The book of Job opens with the fact that Job lived in the land of Uz. Historically, territories were often named after their founders, so the founder of the region where Job resided was likely Uz. According to Genesis chapter 5 verse 32 and Genesis chapter 10 verses 22 and 23, Uz was the great-grandson of Noah. An additional clue is provided in Job chapter 42 verse 16, which mentions that Job lived for 140 years following his trials. Before his trials, he had fathered several sons and 3 daughters. Therefore, Job must have lived at least 180 years in total. This lifespan aligns with those of Arpachshad, Terah, and Abraham. Another clue is found in Job chapter 42 verse 11, which mentions the coinage used in Job's time, kesitah. Many modern translations will render this term as some form of money, so finding the Hebrew name may require concordance. This term is only mentioned 2 other times in the Bible. In Genesis chapter 33 verse 19, Jacob buys a plot of land for 100 kesitahs. And there is a reference to this transaction in Joshua chapter 24 verse 32. So by the time of the Exodus around 1440 BC, the kesitah was no longer in use. With these clues, most conservative scholars agree that Job was written between 2000 BC and 1750 BC. This is more than 1,000 years before the Greek philosophers conceived of a spherical earth. Referring to the passage of Job chapter 26 verse 10, it is written, "He has inscribed a circle on the face of the waters between light and darkness." Some may argue against the interpretation that this passage provides a scientifically accurate description of the Earth's geometric shape. At first glance, describing the Earth as circular does not necessarily imply a spherical form. However, a closer examination of the text reveals essential details. This passage states that the circle lies at the boundary of light and darkness. This is the critical point. It suggests that God was indeed referring to a spherical Earth. It is observed that the sun moves across the sky throughout the day. If the sun were seen at a 45-degree angle, the Earth would appear as an oval instead of a circle. And at sunrise or sunset, only the edge of a flat Earth would be illuminated by the sun. This would cause the boundary of light and darkness to become a straight line because the sunlight could not reach other parts of a disk. There is a cliche that says a picture speaks 1,000 words. I believe a video says more. This video focuses on the United States Eastern Time Zone during the equinox, when daylight and nighttime hours are equal. It compares the Earth in the shape of a disk in a sphere from sunrise to sunset, allowing the viewer to reach their own conclusion. The only time a viewer would consider a flat Earth to be a circle would be near the noontime hour and at midnight. Furthermore, at sunrise and sunset, it could only be considered a straight line. Thus, Job chapter 26 verse 10 accurately describes the geometric shape of the Earth as a sphere. After viewing this clip, one recognizes that anyone opposing the idea that God described the Earth as a sphere must cling to one of 2 untenable beliefs. Either Job did not realize that the sun moved across the sky, or Job chapter 26 verse 10 states that the Earth is a circle for 2% of the time, an oval 96% of the time, and a straight line 2% of the time. Both positions are false prima facie. 1 Corinthians chapter 14 verse 33 states that God does not sow confusion. Rather, he wants his followers to know peace, which comes from knowing the truth. Satan wants to snatch away this truth, and one of the best ways of accomplishing this goal is to sow confusion. Today, we've cleared some confusion away on the topic of the geometric shape of the Earth. But how could Job accurately describe the Earth as a sphere? It becomes obvious that someone knew the true shape of the Earth almost 4,000 years ago. We call this entity God. Thus, there is scientific evidence for the biblical God. And that wraps up today's topic. I covered this topic and many others in my book, Christianity versus Naturalism. If you're interested in similar topics, it is a good book to read.